Welcome, everyone, to an exciting episode of the Average Ontario Anglers Fishing Podcast. This is now Season 3. Did you ever think we'd get this far, Jesse?
I never thought we'd get past episode 3, not alone 3 seasons worth.
That's right. We had to say it again one more time. But this is episode 1 of Season 3. We're super excited because we have an amazing guest today. And as we promised, we're going to have a lot of real professional guys and girls, people who know their stuff about fishing. We have a bunch of them lined up for you this year. And again, we know that a lot of you might be a little concerned that it's going at 2 episodes a month only, but don't worry. We have tons and tons of content. We're going to have a great episode for you today. This will be a good example of what's in store for the rest of the year. So don't write us off yet, To introduce our guest today, we have Donny. He's from one of the hot operators for Hotbox Huts. Say hi, Donny.
Hey guys, Donny from Hotbox Huts here.
And say hi too, Jesse.
I'm here.
He doesn't follow directions well. But we have, like I said, an awesome episode. It's all about ice fishing. And of course, it's January. That's what's on your mind, I hope. Or open water season, but you got a long wait. So why not go out ice fishing? We're going to talk about all kinds of safety stuff, but also techniques, tips, ways to get you on the ice and actually landing more fish. To start us off, though, we have an interesting fishing fact that Jesse has put together for us. So let's start us off with that.
All right. So I was kind of thinking today, what is the best interesting fishing fact that we are going to start off the new year, 2024? I didn't think the world would last till 2024, but here we are fishing in 2024.
2025.
Is that the day it blows up?
The year is 2025.
Oh, it's 2025. Well, guess what? 2024 was pretty good. That's why I'm thinking about it. But I was just thinking, we're in 2025 now, and I was thinking back, 2024 was a great year for me. And if you're listening to this in your head, did you have a good year? You may be thinking, I had a pretty good year. Some people had crap years. Some people had amazing years. But in 2025, you are all going to have a great year. And I'll tell you why. One thing that I really enjoyed last year that me and Andrew did is we tried so many new lakes, new techniques, and fishing in new places that we've never done before. And I think one thing that me and Andrew love to do is we love learning. And I think that is an essential quality that every successful angler of any age needs to learn how to do, is to learn new things. So I found this article that I found very interesting. It's called The Angler's Edge, Why You Should Never Stop Learning. Now, I kind of went into some deep stuff about the brain synapses and stuff and like all the brain juice and all. Yeah, we're not going to do any of that. But I thought we could cover some of the points about different ways that we can learn and how we can improve as an angler so that in 2025, as we're fishing throughout the year, we can do better and we can enjoy the year better. So I thought we could go through some of these points and we can talk about them. So one of the ways that I learn a lot is when I fish with different people. Now, I know throughout the year, oftentimes we fish by ourselves oftentimes, and, usually, you have a pretty good day. But when you fish with someone like Andrew all the time, sometimes it gets annoying. So whenever we get to fish with someone new, someone exciting, a lot of people we get to fish with over the years, oftentimes you will realize that one thing that separates every angler is every single angler fishes slightly differently, don't they? No one fishes the same way. So the way that two people will fish the same species, the same river, the same lake, the same spot, the same everything, but they're doing something different. And in that regard, I find that you can learn something from anyone that you're fishing with. And there's been more than a few occasions where I've gone fishing with a new guy. I have an example. I was fishing with Matt from Kitefish Beads. He took me steelheading in a stretch of river that I fished for years. And I fished with him and he taught me so many little tricks. Well, he didn't teach me, but I was watching him fishing, right? And I picked up so many little tips in the way that he fished, and I learned so much even in just a few hours. So I feel like anyone you're fishing with of any skill level, make sure you watch them, because even a beginner angler, someone just getting into the sport, they may do something that you never thought of. Has that ever happened to you, Andrew?
Absolutely. And I have been outfished by my, at the time, 6-year-old nephew.
Doesn't take much with Andrew, though.
Ain't that the truth?
Another reason why it's always good to learn is because there's always so much that you can learn. I think there's a lot of anglers that get kind of cocky these days, and they're like, "Oh, I'm an expert, this, I'm an expert that, I can't learn anything." You can't literally know everything about a species of fish. Like I remember watching a documentary about this guy who fished for muskies his whole life. And again, muskies are kind of, difficult to catch. They're elusive. But he was like 80 something years old. And he's like, I have no clue what the heck is going on half the time. And this guy was like an accomplished angler. He's like, I have no clue. He's like, you could live 10 lifetimes and still not figure these fish out completely. So we should never think that, we're at the point where we don't have to try new things or learn new things, because we can always learn. There's always new things. And there's a few reasons why we have to do this. Now, number one is because fish adapt. Now, it would be really nice, wouldn't it, if fish literally did the same thing all the time and they ate the same baits, they're in the same spot, like, oh, that rock, there's always a fish there, or like the fish are going to be here this time of year and all that stuff. And unfortunately, fish have to adapt to different things in the environment. So they have to adapt to their environment, fishing pressure, water condition, climate change, all different stuff like that. And we're facing all that in this area. Like we live in Southern Ontario. We have Kawartha Lakes, Lake Simcoe, all the areas around here that are fairly pressured waters, right? So we have to adapt to how the fish are. We have to learn to catch the fish. So in highly pressured lakes, fish oftentimes, how would you answer this, Donnie? I'm interested because you're out on the lake a lot. Do you think that fish can get used to certain baits and turn off of them?
I used to think no. Experience has since taught me otherwise. I'm one of those guys like you're talking about that kind of get set in their old ways and maybe get a little cocky and think they know everything. I've fallen victim to that myself. The area of Lake Simcoe that I live on, there's a particularly good spot near us for perch fishing in open water, for example, that I thought I owned it. I mastered it. And then we went out with my friend Greg Emile fishing for tails, a very well-known guide in Ontario. And I was fishing with him one day, and he's like, hey, if you don't mind, maybe, can I give you some pointers? And at first I'm kind of like, wow, this is my spot. We're in your boat, but we're in my spot. But sure enough, the few little tips and tricks that he has suggested that I do, I doubled my catch rate. It was unbelievable. And it was just getting some fresh advice, a fresh idea, and trying something new, where I've been trying the same thing for, it's been 8 years fishing that spot. So absolutely open your mind, be willing to accept new ideas and new presentations for sure.
Definitely. And it just brings to my mind, I know I mentioned it last season, but I was fishing with Travis from Kawartha Fishing Charters, and we were fishing first week of December, musky fishing, super cold water, like in the 30s. And again, I say to guides that I'm fishing with that have a lot of experience, hey, I know how to fish, but if I'm doing something stupid or if you have any suggestions, please, like I'm all ears. Like I want to learn, right? So I'm fishing and he just looks at me and he's like, slower. I'm like, okay, I'm just like pulling the rod. He's like, slower, slower. 5 minutes later, I had slowly sped up out of like, I'm a fast reeler. And he's like, slower. And guess what? I was fishing slow. I caught some fish. So it may sound annoying to be like counseled, like, oh, you should try this by someone more experienced than you. But like you said, little tips like that, it may be something that you just never thought of doing. It can really help you catch more fish. Now, another thing that we can always learn is new techniques and technologies. Now, these may not necessarily be new technologies. So they may be new to you, maybe not new in general. So like maybe you've never used a fish finder before and you're going ice fishing. It's not like, oh, it's new technology, like the latest version of Live Scope. I have to learn how to use that. We're not talking about that. A regular fish finder, if you've never used one before, or a flasher, that's a one that a lot of people don't know how to use. They look at the dial, like the circle, and they're like, what the heck is that? It's some kind of weird Iron Man technology. Like, learn to use technology, because I know me and Andrew, when the times we've gone fishing for lake trout, if we didn't have a flasher, we would have been lost. Absolutely lost. But if we spent the time to do it and to learn it, someone showed us how to use it, and we had a great time just even watching the thing. It was so much fun, right?
Because we still
if we hadn't learned,
anything,
we would have sucked.
We learned.
Yeah, we watched our buddy catch fish, and we learned that we needed to get a flasher. All right.
Talking about flashers, that's an interesting thing. So talking about flashers and technology and learning something new. Back when I first started ice fishing, we did use sonar, but if the ice wasn't deep enough, we would actually stick our arm down the hole and rotate the transducer 90 degrees to look for schooling fish leaving us to see which direction they were going, you know? So that's, you know, there's little things like that you don't need to be really experienced to know. There's lots of ways of overcoming the expense of high-end products, and you can get out there and you can use what you have, right? And sometimes people just throw you an idea and it works.
Yeah. If it works, it's not a dumb idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Generally. Take that with a grain of salt, people. The next thing about learning on the water is it does increase your happiness and satisfaction. And I'd have to say, for my example, catching some muskies in late December or early December, I could have went out and fished my own speed the whole day and caught absolutely nothing. But the fact that I was willing to learn from someone that was better than me at fishing, which doesn't take much. Again, we're just average guys. I got a lot of satisfaction from catching 3 muskie, season 3, 3 muskie. What can I say? It was a great day. The next thing would be it increases your confidence. So learning a new thing. Now, I want Andrew to talk about fishing. I know we're kind of talking about muskie fishing, but this is the idea that came to my head. I have been fishing for muskie with like rubber baits for a few years, and I love it. And I was like to Andrew, I want you to catch a fish on rubber. So we got some tips from some guys on how to fish them, and Andrew went out and he caught his first fish on rubber, and now it's one of his favorite baits.
Actually, my 2 top producing baits last year were both rubber baits because I set it as a goal. So I caught my first, fish on a Ratzilla Junior, and I caught my largest muskie, the 50, that was on one of the solid body Shadzilla up behind me there. Amazing. And that's once you catch a 50, you absolutely gain confidence in a bait.
It's true.
Well,
so we could go on.
Sorry, what did you say? When you try new things, you're learning, right? But what you're learning is you're learning to learn, which is what our whole education system is, right? So why do we throw that away once we're out of high school and post-secondary? Keep an open mind and learn to learn, right? It's not just about learning that one time. Be keeping an open mind every time you're out there, because anybody you meet on the water, no matter what their skill set is, they're going to have something to teach you.
Absolutely.
They're going to have something they know better than you.
And that's why you're listening to this podcast, people. Not to hear me and Andrew talk, but to hear Donny from Hotbox Huts talk about ice fishing. Because I, you know what, the listeners, you're okay. I want to learn. You guys just get to listen to what I'm learning first. So sucks to be you. Just kidding. All right. So the final thoughts of this would be fishing. It's definitely a lifelong adventure for many of us. And the more we embrace learning, the more exciting it becomes. There's so many new techniques and new fish and new spots you want to try. You get excited. It's not just the same thing over and over again. Hey, but if you like the same thing over and over again, you can do that. We're not going to be mad at you. But new stuff is fun. It's challenging. It's satisfying. And I would say for everyone listening, make it a goal. I challenge every single one of you to try to learn one new thing this year. Learn a new lake. Learn how to read navionics. Learn to use a fish finder. Learn to fish a specific lure. And I guarantee after that happens, that is completed, you get that satisfaction, you're going to want to learn something else. And then eventually you become insane, obsessed anglers, and you spend all your money in fishing lures, and your life is over. And that's the interesting fishing fact of 2025, the first one.
Another great point is, I was just thinking, the reason why to stay learning on the water is how many times from one year to the next, let's say bass season, summer, largemouth, fishing the weeds. How many times, Jesse, have we gone and we don't catch a single fish in a hollow body frog, but that year it's jigs. Next year it's not jigs, but it's like finesse topwaters only. And next year they're only hitting worms. Like it it changes year to year. So if you're stuck in your ways, not only are you not going to be enjoying fishing as much, but you could be limiting how much you're catching. So
absolutely,
that's a good reminder. Keep learning.
Yeah. Keep learning, people. Learning is fun.
Going on to our main topic. Again, this is all about ice fishing. Why are we talking about ice fishing? Because it's winter. That's what you do. And that's what our guest does. He has, how long have you been operating huts for, Donny?
The start was unofficial, but we're looking at maybe 10, 12 years now. Way
That's
back
awesome.
in the beginning, I just had, I didn't like having one hut. I liked having 3 personal huts because I wanted different options, right? For different species. And I found I got really hooked on buying things off of Kijiji. fishing gear, used fishing gear. So what I did in the very beginning was anytime I buy some used fishing gear, the toughest part to figure out is how do we get it in our hands? Ontario is big. So I talk guys into bringing me my purchases in exchange for fishing in my huts, no charge. And that's how the business became a business. I'd have all 3 huts out there filled with people that brought me Kijiji goods, and I wouldn't even be able to fish myself in those huts. And I'm like, hey, maybe we should make a business out of this. It's kind of working, right? And people have a want for it.
So you do all your business based on the bartering system. That's awesome.
Well, it started that way. It certainly started that way. Now we prefer cash, check, or credit card. But yeah, in the beginning, it was a barter, total barter. Absolutely.
I've got a couple old broken rods you can have. We'll talk later after the show as to how to get to use.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so Hotbox Huts, you fish out of Lake Simcoe, right? Is what you're based out of?
Lake Simcoe, we only have one location on Lake Simcoe, and it's the very bottom end of Cooks Bay on the west side. Mm-hmm. So if you're coming up from Toronto, we're within a mile of the first access point. So we're as close as you can get to the greater Toronto area from where we are. There's plenty of other options on the lake, though. We're not the only operator out there. There's got to be at least 15 of us now covering the whole perimeter. But yeah, we're pretty much the first in line when you're coming up from the city.
That's awesome. So we're going to talk first about probably the most important subject to breach when we're talking about ice fishing is safety, because catching fish in the ice is fun. We'll get to that. Absolutely. But if you do it in an unsafe manner, you don't have any fun and possibly neither do your friends and family if something really bad happens. So we're going to talk. Yeah, I'm getting
too soon.
We're getting real.
Yeah.
And I apologize for anyone who has had to deal with any of that, because there's every year people still go through the ice. Every year there's always some, I can't say this word, statistics. They're always present every single year. So it's an important thing just to cover. We're going to get that done first. So what is safe ice for fishing? What would you classify safe ice as?
Well, I'm going to jump into the group that's going to say no ice is safe ice. And that's the truth. You're on a layer of solid water above fluid water that's subjected to various environmental conditions that can change hourly, if not daily, hourly. So again, no ice is safe ice. You'll notice when we do our ice reports, which we regularly post up on YouTube and socials, our comment when we're measuring the ice is we are measuring between 0 and our actual ice measurement, because we know that out there's always going to be pressure cracks that are open. There's always going to be holes that are open. There's always going to be even if someone drills an 8-inch hole and fishes in a pop-up, or they drill multiple of them, when they leave with their pop-up, those holes are still there. And they may skim over, and they will skim over, and you're not going to see them. So we say always go out there as if there's zero ice, and be prepared for that. Now, realistically, take it for what I say here. We're looking at between 2 and 6 inches is what we consider safe ice. Now, if you get 2 inches, like right now, literally last night, Cooks Bay, where we operate, froze over for the first time this year. The old ice, because you have a shoreline ice that pushes out a bit, that shoreline ice measured 3 inches. It's weak. It's what we call white ice. It's weak, it's porous, it's not strong, it's old. It's also snow covered. The new ice only measured 1 inch. So we're not looking at going out yet. No one should be even considering it. But the quality between that 1 inch and that 3 inch are actually probably pretty close in strength and what it can support. And it gets tough to explain until you've had a lot of experience out there. But 2 inches of solid black ice is kind of the North American standard for walking. For us, we want 6 inches of black ice. We don't want 6 inches of ice total. We want 6 inches of black. So when we cut our holes and we measure down, we could measure 10 inches total, which would be 4 inches on top with 6 inches below. We're good to go. We don't even count white ice in our measurements because it's a 10-to-1 ratio. The white ice just has no strength and no support at all. And many people might not know the difference between black and white ice. Would you? I'll fill you in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do tell. So, can I add one point just
absolutely.
before you get into that? Just if you're listening to this, we're recording this a week and a half before this comes out. So if we're talking about current ice conditions, keep in mind this is around Christmas time that we're recording this. So just keep that in mind. Someone might be like, what do you mean it was only froze over yesterday? It's been like that for 2 weeks. Anyway, continue. Sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely.
That's a disclaimer.
I should have thrown that disclaimer in there. But the different, like, ice forms in two ways. So when you first get your first initial skim, which will always happen on a cold night with no winds, and what we experienced last night that created that for us was we had minus 22 degrees Celsius with 4 km/h winds from the north. We couldn't ask for a better situation. We weren't questioning if we were going to make ice. We knew we were going to make ice without a doubt from our experience out there. Now, that first bit of ice that we make, it skims over, and then all the ice after that either builds on top of the ice that's existing or below it. So when those cold temperatures penetrate through the insulating layer of snow and existing ice, it will build black ice on the bottom side. That's what we want. That's the strong, good stuff. That can, it doesn't take much of that to even handle the weight of a pickup truck. Mm-hmm. But because we're dealing with warmer climates now, and even, I don't want to get into the global warming debate, but things are a little warmer than usual right now. We're getting heavier precipitation events. So we're getting more snow than we've ever had before. Well, that snow lands on top of the ice, and then the sun and the environmental factors will kind of knock it down. And as it gets knocked down, that becomes the white ice that's on top. So you might go and you could measure 2 feet of ice, and only 6 inches of it is black, and the rest of it is white that's formed from the snow on top, which we don't even, for our sake, we don't even consider it structural at all. We totally ignore the white. It's that black that you want. So just because or even, I'm sure you guys have heard of pack ice before. That's what they're experiencing, and that comes from the wind. So where we are, we're on the west side of the lake, so we don't experience pack ice very much because we have a dominant west wind. And what will happen is if the ice breaks up, the little pieces float away and follow the wind on top, and they build up on the other side, which is typically your east side of Lake Simcoe, your Beaverton, your Keswick. They'll get what's called pack ice. Well, that pack ice is all white ice. Now, they get a lot of it. Their ice depth might be 2 or 3 times what ours is, and it's okay. It's structural to some extent, but it's very, very unpredictable, and it's very, very inconsistent because you're dealing with chunks of ice that are floating and refreezing. So you could deal with 2 inches of ice in one spot and maybe 2 feet in another, and it creates some dangerous situations. Like last year, I think we've had over 20 people that needed to be rescued on Lake Simcoe. That's too many. Yeah. It's too many. And hopefully podcasts like this will help people be a little more informed too.
So how do we recognize those dangerous conditions? You're saying how, weather can shift. So what are the things that you look for, especially on, let's say, early season or late season when the ice is more likely to start to shift? Because there's going to be areas of open water somewhere in the lake that it can kind of move to. What are you looking for that you would then be additionally cautious about?
Yeah, so it's usually the early ice is the most dangerous and late ice is the most dangerous. Now with early, and they're totally opposite situations. So with early ice, our shorelines tend to freeze first. And for example, where we run our huts, they have, and we have 3 inches right now. And then you'll be walking out and it's all going to be ice, but you can have a little bit of snow that's blowing across at night. And you don't know where that line is between the existing shelf and the new shelf. So that gets a lot of people. That catches a lot of people by surprise. A lot of machines go in the ice that way in the beginning. Not as many as near late season, though. Now, late season is the opposite effect. So the shorelines build first, but they also thaw first. So late season, out in the middle of the lake, we often still have our huts out there operating on really good ice that we're really confident in. But on the shoreline, we may be building bridges for people to walk across. We may be building bridges for machines. Last year, we got our last hut off the ice about 11 o'clock at night on our last day of operation. And the very next day on that shoreline where we had just pulled huts that weigh thousands of pounds, you couldn't walk. We were falling through with our muck boots. That's how quick it can change. I've actually myself been caught out running some errands and late season cleanup. Like we use blocks under our huts, right? So we got to chip them out of the ice at the end. So we get all the huts off. I went out there with my little husky. It's like a snow dog kind of machine, with a trailer sleighs behind me to go and pick up all my little blocks of wood. I went out fine. I was fine when I came out. When I came in, I sunk my machine in a matter of hours. So the ice I went out on wasn't the same as the ice I came back on. I know the risks, and I'm running a business, and I'm prepared, and we're safe. And you know, at the end of the day, I'm not going to get hurt doing that. But for somebody that's maybe got a little less experience, I've swam a lot. So in the winter, I've swam a lot too, so I'm quite comfortable with it. But if you're not, that can create a really dangerous situation. And it's mostly the changes. But yeah, it's hard to tell what to really look for. Follow your ice reports. So you've got guys like me putting them out. There's guys all over Lake Simcoe now. The whole lake is covered with some sort of an ice report at any given point in time. Do you see people out there already? You know, yes, okay, you see people. It doesn't mean that following a straight line to those people is safe, though. We've seen that many times where people see a hut out there and we've witnessed it, and they go, oh, we're going to go out fish near those guys. And they walk right into literally a pressure crack. We've seen people step into open water walking out to get out there. So it's a lot tougher to tell than, you know, for a beginner, go with the flow. We usually recommend if you're new to ice fishing, and this isn't just to get sales, but go out with an operator, get a feel for it. You know, for the price, go out in a warm, cozy hut, go out on their machine, and just get a feel for things. You're going to know at that point if your clothing is even up to the task. You know, if you're going out with an operator and you're cold, well, we have heated huts and heated transportation, then maybe you need to up your gear a bit, right? But as far as the quality of the ice and knowing when it's safe and when to go, it's usually when other people are out there. If you see me and my team out there and we're on our own and we're doing stuff, don't go out. Plain and simple, don't go out. We have risks that we're willing to take. We're maybe not mentally right sometimes. We laugh when we fall in the water. It's funny. It's a joke. It wouldn't be far-fetched for one of us to push each other in. We're so comfortable with it, and we've done it so much that at the end of the day,
Anglers does not recommend pushing your buddies into the ice.
Absolutely. For us, the panic factor is gone, and that's the biggest issue with falling in the ice is the panic factor. I fall in, I laugh, and I usually float and swim on my back for a bit and let my buddies see me and take a picture if they want. Then we climb out and get back to work. For somebody that hasn't experienced cold water like that before, even for me, it's not fun. I don't enjoy it. I don't do it on purpose, and I certainly never would. But it's really hard to really know the ice conditions unless you're getting advice from somebody. And these days with social media, you got to really watch the sources of that advice. Go with, honestly, what your professionals, businesses, and those operations, they're not going to put out something that's going to attempt to hurt you, right?
So on that note, then we'll plug it again later. But where do you post your ice reports? Are they on social media, or do you have a website you post them on? And if so, just plug that here quick so that people, they're hearing your voice now, they're going to trust you. So
yeah, well, absolutely. So if you go on YouTube, just search Hotbox Huts. That'll take you to our channel where we do fairly regular ice reports. We try to do one before every weekend, or if we notice a big change in the ice. And those reports are done. We either do them personally on site. We may have one of our guys go and actually measure and film him measuring and then do a voiceover, but at least we're getting that out. And aside from the YouTube, then we throw it on socials after, which is everything: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. My wife, Ashley, is pretty big on the TikTok, so she throws that stuff up there too. But they're out there. And thing to keep in mind is we're just one little part of the lake. We can't speak to the whole lake. We're speaking right to where we operate, and that's it. That's it. I can't tell you how the lake is 30 kilometers away from me, or it's about 20 kilometers to Beaverton. I can't tell you what the ice is over there because I don't experience it myself, and I'm not going to regurgitate what I hear. We're only going to report on what we physically see and what we actually see. And watch the ice reports, guys, where people are speaking to the ice and they're not standing on it or measuring it. We're finding there's a whole lot of guys standing on the shoreline these days, recording and submitting ice reports and posting them up, speaking to what they've heard on social media, but they're not actually going out and drilling holes and measuring themselves, which we're already doing this year. You know, we have enough ice. 3 inches is enough for us to get out there to do what we got to start doing. We're going out and we're measuring and getting it done right now. But yeah, YouTube and socials for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. So one last thing on our safety side, what tools do you recommend? What tools do you bring out, and what tools do you recommend anyone else going out on the ice to have with them?
Okay, I think I made a little list here of some of that stuff too. Boom, 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 boom.
We like lists.
Oh, I made a list, and I had some real messy writing here. Let me find it. Okay, yeah. Clothing number one. Clothing, 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 clothing. You're going to want to wear a base layer of merino. Absolutely. We want merino socks. We want merino pants. We want merino upper body. We want merino underwear. We want merino toque. We want merino gloves. And the reason you want merino is we're dealing with ice and water. Merino still insulates when it's wet to an extent. Maybe not as good as when it's cold, but it does still insulate. Even when we're working, we wear merino fingerless gloves underneath our gloves. And because we need the dexterity and to be able to use our fingers for some of our complicated tasks, we will take the big upper glove off. We still have merino on the palm of our hands, and it's going to get wet because we're dealing with wet stuff in and out of the water, measuring ice. Even a measuring tape going in and out drops some water on you. Clothing, incredibly important, as well as flotation. So we don't mess around. When I'm talking about falling through the ice as often as I do, I'm comfortable doing that because I know I'm safe because of what I'm wearing. I float. When we fall through the ice, I don't even remember the last time that my head even got wet falling through the ice. Flotation these days with a full suit, it stops you dead on the way down. It literally feels like someone's grabbed you by the shoulders and is catching you. And you actually, I've looked around because I thought someone grabbed me one time when I fell in unexpectedly. I thought someone caught me. I'm like, wow. It felt like in my armpits, I could feel the suit doing what it was supposed to do, right? Flotation number one. We tell everybody, do not go out on that lake without flotation. I don't care who you are, experienced operator or novice. Now, flotation can get expensive. Floater suits are costly. Wear a life jacket over top of your suit. So the benefits of the life
style,
jacket,
right?
yeah,
not the inflator
actually,
style. We talked about that a couple weeks ago.
no.
Jesse had a fact about that one.
Yes,
they don't work well. Just a quick reminder on that. They don't work well in sub-zero temperatures. They may not inflate fully. They may not inflate quick enough. They may not be spaced underneath your jacket. You can't activate it. So an inflatable life jacket is a no-go on ice. But if you can wear a foam life jacket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with a foam life jacket, we typically recommend the newer like kayaking style that allows for freedom of movement of your arms. We have guys that work with us that wear them over top of their snowsuits when they come out, and they prefer the kayak jacket over a floater suit. They like the feel. It actually provides an extra layer of warmth as well. You know, it does seal in some air, and you can still move your arms, and you hardly even know it's there. And you look kind of cool walking around too. Looks like a bulletproof vest these guys have. But yeah, those. The other thing too, we've all heard it. Throw ropes, something to reach with. We carry on all of our machines a throw rope style. It comes in a bag, a weighted bag, and we practice using them. We've never needed to use one yet, but we have them on all of our machines and on all of our equipment, and we're never without them on the ice just in case. Because if someone does fall in on bad ice, the last thing you want to do is go in with them and join them while you're attempting to rescue them. You need to protect yourself, because if you haven't taken care of yourself, you can't take care of your friends. Cell phone, absolutely with a charger. So cell phones do not hold a charge out in the cold. I don't care what cell phone you have. The life of the battery is always going to be depleted faster in the cold than in a warmer situation. So what's really cool with the new phones is they have the magnetic chargers on the back. We suggest that you bring a 10,000 amp hour little battery pack with a magnet. Screw the cables and the cords and whatnot. Just go with the magnet, slam it on there. That's going to keep your phone warm while it's charging, so you know you're going to need it. So we attach that to our phone right away. Our phone goes inside in a zippered pocket. Zippered. Anyone that knows me will hear me talk about zippered pockets in the winter. Because if you take a machine of mine out on the ice and you're working with me and you get off that machine and you're taking the key, I want it in a zippered pocket because I'm going to need that key later too. But zippered pocket is a big thing for your phone.
Make sure you zip them up. I've seen too many videos of guys bending over and it falls right in the hole. So zippered pockets and use the zipper.
use the zipper. I insist. I have personally lost too many phones down the ice. I now keep 2 spare phones and 2 spare SIM cards. And since I bought them, I haven't had a phone fall through the ice, oddly enough. But I've lost a lot. And you know what? And I hate the idea of losing a phone down the hole. For one, you lose your phone. For two, you're polluting the lake. I don't think my phone belongs in the bottom of the lake. It belongs in my pocket. So I've made mistakes and I've smartened up a bit. Flashlight in addition to your phone. Flashlight is great for signaling help. And I can even speak to that where I kayak fish quite a bit on Lake Simcoe. And one night when I was coming in, my headlamp, I was using it to guide myself in, and you have to have a white light anyways. I actually had a gentleman leave his cottage, jump on his jet ski, and rush out to me. Because when I was looking side to side with my headlamp, he thought I was signaling SOS. Mm. So it does work, and it does get attention. The other thing that most people overlook these days is a whistle. A whistle that works when it's wet. If any of us hear a whistle on the lake, we're common. You're common. We all know what a whistle means. If someone's screaming out with a whistle, they need help, right? Mm-hmm. Keep a whistle on you. I keep a whistle, and it's also got a compass on it, all in one. Mm-hmm. And I keep it right close to my chest. So if I go under, it's right here. I don't have to reach underwater into a pocket. It's right here. I've never needed it yet.
But it's such a cheap thing too. Like a whistle, $7-8, it could save your life. Why not
Absolutely.
have one?
If you have an old orange bucket for your boat, I know me, mm-hmm. I'll wait. The batteries will just get like rotted out, and it costs as much to buy a new waterproof flashlight as it does a brand new orange bucket. So I buy a new one. Mm-hmm. Take the whistle out of the old one and slap it on your suit. Bring it out with you. Put it with your ice fishing kit. That's a good whistle that does work while wet.
Absolutely. And I was mentioning the compass. When the winds pick up on the lake, the snow can blow. I have been lost myself on the lake on foot, less than 500 meters from shore. I ended up approaching shore and coming in over 2 kilometers from where I thought I was going because my phone died, because I did not have that battery pack in my zippered pocket like I now save. So any of the things I come out with here, I've learned the hard way.
Mm-hmm. And a good thing you note about that compass too, because I've experienced a couple times, if there's a snowstorm on the lake, you'll lose GPS signal. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't trust the technology. Yes, if I have the option between using a compass and a paper map, or even just a compass, or my GPS, mm-hmm. I will choose a GPS. But there are sometimes it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And again, it could be the battery dies or whatnot.
Well, and here's one tip for navigating with direction. And this is a good thing to really put in the podcast too, is us ice hut operators do not point. So a lot of us will put trees out, aiming mm-hmm. towards our on our roads going out to our villages. Our trees do not aim towards shore. Our trees aim to the north. And that's something that can benefit other people when they're coming off the lake as well. If you see a tree and it's from an operator on a known road, those trees are tipped to the north. So that'll help you find your bearings and your routing that way.
I didn't know that. That is a really good tip.
It helps us as well as the other anglers out there too, because we get lost too. We experience high winds. We're out there in the big snow events, and we're out there all night long sometimes, and we can't see a dang thing. With those trees help save us as well. One of the little things that matters more than people seem to think, and it helps a lot, is seriously those little hot packs. I stuff hot packs in every pocket of my suit when I go out, and I give them out like donations as needed, because you know what? Nothing will ruin your day more than having cold feet and cold hands. It's uncomfortable fishing with cold feet. It's instinctive to get out of that situation, to get to warm feet. So if you can change your socks and throw hot packs in there, that'll keep you out there a little longer. And your hands, if you go to chase that pike down the hole that you missed, and you might be up to your elbow in water. Well, now you come out and you're soaked to here, and it's your only sweater. Well, those hot packs will help, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's the equipment you need out there. I talked about throw ropes already. Oh, mm-hmm. A buddy. Do not, under any circumstances, even ourselves as professionals, we do not go out in the lake in early and late ice by ourselves. We always have someone with us. And even in the beginning, when we first start going out doing our ice reports, you won't see it in the ice reports. We tie a rope to ourselves. and it's about 100 feet long, and it's dragging behind the first guy, just in case. Because we don't mess around. We're not out there to get hurt either, right? We may not mind it, but if we're going to go for a swim, it's a little more comforting to know that if you have a rope under your, and the thing about a rope too is make sure it's hooked around your body, under your armpits, 100% of the time, because you're not going to be able to do that if you fall in and you're panicking. You're not going to be able to grab that rope and get in there. So just throw it under. But you know what? No one should really be going out in those conditions anyways. Let us do it. Let us do it.
So one last thing then for safety is, what's the kind of order of operations if someone falls through? We finished laughing at them after I tripped them and pushed them on the back, but they've fallen in the ice. What is, let's say we have our safety kit, we have a throw rope, we have everything we talked about. What or as the guy on shore or on the ice still, what's the order of operations that you would do to save that other person?
So we've all probably heard the 1-10-1 rule when it comes to ice safety when someone goes in. You have 1 minute to recover and to calm down. In that first minute, you'll panic, you'll gasp. That is something that we don't experience anymore because we've experienced this so much already and we know we're going to be okay at the end of it. So you got 1 minute of just calming down. So your first thing that should happen is whoever falls in the ice, they're going to be frantically trying to get out of the ice. You're going to tell them to stop, tell them to float, tell them to get calm until they're breathing at a reasonable rate, given the situation. Then they can attempt rescue. Their first attempt at rescue should be self-rescue. It is easier to get out of the ice than most people think if you've practiced it. Myself, literally, you tip up, you go horizontal, like you're swimming on top of the water. Don't try to climb up and lift all your body weight. Go horizontal, let the water do the work, let the buoyancy of your body do the work. Kick your feet like crazy. I have picks always. I've never even needed them. Just between my arms and my elbows, and even on wet, slippery ice, that kicking and going fully horizontal, I'm out in a matter of seconds. If self-rescue doesn't work, which is not going to work for everybody, because not everybody falls through the ice all the time, and it could be the first time, it could be quite intimidating. You have 10 minutes of a window before they won't be able to self-rescue. The temperature will start shutting down their nervous system, and their muscles are going to be at about 50% of the strength they would have in the beginning when they first fell in. Then we're hitting danger zone. After that 10 minutes, you've got about 1 hour, though, before you hit hypothermic conditions. Now, the really neat thing about water is it's only 0 degrees because it's water. So a lot of times the colder temperature is going to be when you come out. The water itself is only 0. That's the one thing I try to remind everybody. It's only 0. Yes, it feels awful, but it's only 0. It's not enough to give you frostbite. It is enough to get you hypothermic after an hour. But what we say to do is after someone goes in and they calm down, if you can throw them a throw rope and it works, great. If you can reach to them with a reaching tool, that's excellent. But after about a minute or two, call the authorities. You've got a cell phone, call them. Don't necessarily call them to come and rescue, but let them know what's going on. My friend fell in the lake. I'm going to try to get him out. This is where we are. That's going to get them to start moving in your direction. That's also going to give them your phone number because there's a lot of houses on the shorelines watching what's going on too. And they're going to get multiple calls. So at least they know they have contact with you. They may even stay on the phone with you. But within a minute or two of your friend falling in, if they're not out right away, you should be calling. And that's going to get the process moving. They may be coming in an airboat. They may be coming from shore, whatever method it is. But at least that gets them coming to you because you only have about an hour for things to get hypothermic. And I have experienced hypothermia before. It's not a fun situation. It takes days, if not weeks, to actually come back from. It's an awful feeling. But yeah, that's there's only so much you can do without risking yourself. Do not go in with them, and if do not reach for them with your hand. It's instinctive, right? You want to help, but chances are if they fell through, you're probably going to fall through the same spot as well.
All right, perfect. So now we're going to move on to what everyone's here to learn from you. That all those things are awesome tips, and we should all be aware of. That's why I made sure it was something that we covered anytime we talk about ice fishing. But now let's pretend we have all that stuff. And let's not pretend. Let's actually have all that stuff. And then we have our ice auger, we have our rods, reels, we have our hut. If we're setting on a hut, we have our clothing, ice scoops, our heater if we want. Now we want to go fishing. So we're going to move on to perch fishing, because I know for me, that's the thing I'm really excited about in winter. I grew up doing it in Lake Simcoe out of Beaverton, was perch fishing. So what would you recommend to be, or what are your top go-to baits or lures for perch?
I made a note about that too. So perch fishing is also my favorite winter fishing. I fish for perch more than anything else, and I'm obsessed, absolutely obsessed. And I'll even challenge people, and I say it, and at first they kind of question me, but I'm like, if you want to know the caliber of the angler you're fishing with, or the caliber of the angler you're listening to, it's how good they are at catching jumbo perch. Because it's not that easy to consistently catch jumbo perch. I think it takes a highly skilled angler to be able to do so. And I absolutely believe that. And the tournaments will show it, because the same guys are winning the same tournaments year after year. And there's a reason for that.
And I'd like to let all our listeners know I am average.
Fair enough. So the big thing with perch is they are schooling fish. So what we find is we see a lot of new people come out with huts or pop-ups, and they go out and they drill a hole, and they're looking for weeds. And that's not what you want with perch. With perch on Lake Simcoe, now keep in mind I'm speaking specifically to Lake Simcoe, Cooks Bay, where I fish. Things could be different elsewhere. You're looking for open, sandy flats. And at any depth. So you could be 12 feet, 14 feet, you could be down 32 feet. Reason being, perch relate to perch more than they relate to structure. So when perch see perch, that's their structure. That's what they relate to. We've had experiences before. We actually put down some Christmas trees and thought we were really smart about 10 years ago to create some structure in an area and test it. We didn't catch nothing. You know why? Because the bass and the pike moved into those trees. So your ambush predators that sit and wait hang out in the weeds, and the perch don't want anything to do with it. So for perch, you want open areas. As far as fishing tips for perch, I find, and I'm a little different than most guys, and I might take some heat for this, but I'm less of a mover and more of a stay put kind of guy. Because they're a schooling fish and they're always moving, I like to call the fish to me. So what I say with perch fishing on Lake Simcoe, there are no hot spots, but there are bad spots. So if you set up in a spot and you don't see a perch for 20 minutes, you're in a bad spot. And by a bad spot, I mean there could be weeds off to the side that you don't see, that you don't know are there. Or you could have a pike hanging out 8 inches below the top of the ice, just sitting there sleeping, that scares everything away because they throw this black profile against the bottom of the ice. So there's a bad spot in that case. Then you would move. But if you're seeing what we call dink perch, your little perch, use them as a tool. Use them as your attractor. Perch are very, very responsive to barometric pressure, and their bite does turn on with low pressure. There's a way we can create low pressure situations for perch. We simply tease them and raise them off the bottom. The higher they come up in the water column, the less pressure they're feeling. It starts to turn on that feeding frenzy situation that not every perch angler has experienced, but you can actually create a feeding frenzy if you start bringing them higher in the water. The other thing, when you bring those dink fish up higher in the water, you're also creating more visual allure. Your jumbo perch will be able to see from further away, and they're going to come and want to join in too and see what's going on. And we typically find you'll have your dink fish kind of sitting high, and the jumbo perch actually kind of cruise on the bottom like a whitefish, mostly consuming what those dink perch are throwing up, actually. They get so excited and they're fighting each other up above them, these little floating pieces of bugs and maybe some shiners they've eaten. That's what the jumbo perch are eating right below them. So use those dink perch to catch your big perch. And you got to watch when you're calling them in. You want some flash, you want some noise. Like I like to use a lipless in a silver, really shiny. But if you overdo it, you're going to call in the pike. And as soon as you have a pike around, you don't have perch around anymore. And those pike on Cooks Bay are awful. I've actually seen it through clear black ice where they move in, and it's like they forget what they were doing. They forget that they were going for a lure, and they just take a nap. Well, now they've taken a nap 6 feet away from your hole, which I've actually seen through black ice. I've gone and walked over and looked through the ice and been able to see them. I've stomped on them, above them, and jumped up and down. The things don't even move. But once that happens, you're going to have no perch as well. So then it's worthwhile to maybe start with that, lipless again, make some noise, see if you can entice that pike to bite. But if they're a schooling fish, they're always moving, and you want to keep that school under you. Efficiency becomes an issue as well. This is where I don't like treble hooks for perch. I want to be able to get the perch off as quickly as possible and have my lure back down the hole as fast as possible, because I want to keep that school entertained that's underneath me. I don't want them gone. Sometimes catching one, or sometimes you'll hook into a dink perch, even a small perch. Just catching it and bringing it up the hole and releasing it is enough to attract other perch. Perch like action. They like the sounds of augers. They like the sounds of your feet on the ice. I think they're the toughest fish in the lake, really, as far as a pack animal goes, because they're like a little pack of coyotes out there. It seems like at times, right? But you gotta fish. You gotta cater to the species you're chasing after, right? Perch fishing and pike fishing and whitefish fishing are all very different things in Lake Simcoe in the winter.
Yeah, for sure.
You liken the perch to coyotes, and all I can picture is like a T-shirt with a bunch of perch like howling at an ice hole,
AOA merch 2025.
We do a lot of merch. That sounds like it might be on the list. I like that one. I'll have to make a note.
Those are some good tips for sure. We've been doing that a lot ourselves. What we'll do is we like to use little lipless and stuff, make a little rapalas and stuff like that, and just pound the bottom, make a little bit of a cloud, shake it around. And that is true. Sometimes you'll get a big pike that swims in, and I've caught some really nice pike out of Cook's Bay when I'm perch fishing, and it does definitely scare off all the perch. So you're just like, you have a whole school of perch. All of a sudden you'll see, because we have an underwater camera, we'll see just a pike swim in, grab your spoon, or just not even grab it, and just scare all the fish, just scatter. They're gone like cockroaches when you turn the light on, right? So that's a good tip of, a little bit of flash, but not too much. You don't want to attract those big pike, because pike can be annoying if you're not fishing for them. Yeah.
So what are some of your top baits then when you are going for perch? What are some that you like to use?
Depends on the situation. Same as always. So if you have nothing under you and nothing around at all, our number one go-to, and I'm guilty of tying one on at the start of the season and leaving it there all season long, and that's a McGathy Simcoe Slayer slab grabber. Is that the Simcoe Slayer, the big one? It looks like it might be. I think it is. Yeah. So we have those available in our custom colors. So they've actually made them for us with glow paint on them, and some red and some black and a red bead. So that lure there is magic. If you could only have one, that's the one to have. I actually pinch the barb down on them.
Yep.
I don't use the barb. And that lure right there, we teach our clients how to use them. There's a timing to that lure. So when you rip it up fast, it spins on the way up. Then you drop it, it shoots out to the side, as you guys know, and then it'll eventually pendulum down to being directly below you and stop. That's when most perch suck in that little bead. They don't go for the whole lure, they go for the bead, because in my thinking, the perch aren't after the whole lure, they're after the bead because they think they're stealing food from another fish. Perch are thieves. They're coyotes. They're pack animals. They actually go for the bead, not the whole lure. You will never get that whole lure in a perch's mouth. And people think it's too big, but that's actually ideal. So now that perch, you usually sight fishing, they get it on that stop. You reel in really quick. You get that perch. Well, now all you have to do is grab that slab grabber, because it's already sticking out its mouth, invert it, perch falls off, you can fire that slab grabber back down the hole, and within 5 seconds, you're catching another fish. That is the go-to. Once the fish are in the area, and by the way, only one person can run those in a hut at a time. They run out. Yes, they run out to the side, and you're going to have some tangles. But one person should be running that at all times if you don't have a large school under you. Once the school's there, we found we have Sci-Fly making the Simcoe bugs. He makes some cool glow ones for us, but honestly, they all work really, really well. Now, they're not so much an attractor because they don't have flash and they're very small lures. But once the perch are under you, works really well. Again, it's got that single hook for easy off, which I always appreciate. The other option, if you're dealing with maybe some newer clients or maybe even kids that aren't going to really hammer down the action of the lure that's required, we throw and we sell them as well. We have Hot Box Huts branded Meigs. They're in 1/4 ounce, and we use them as the weight of a drop shot rig, an ice fishing drop shot rig. So we'll throw the Meigs on the bottom with nothing on it. We'll fish it like a typical Meigs with a high hook about 12, 18 inches up with a minnow. If people want to bring maggots, they work well. And mealworms from the pet stores work really well. That's it right there. That's the one. Yeah, so one of those on the bottom. And what's really neat about that is you'll find quite often you'll be high hooking a lot of small perch, and then the jumbos come in and hammer that Meigs as the weight on the bottom, because the jumbos mid-season are typically just vacuum cleaners on the bottom. It changes a bit later when you get to late ice, but in the beginning, they're just vacuum cleaners following the schools around, playing it safe. They got big by playing it safe, by sticking to the bottom where they're not going to get swallowed up by a pike, following the crew around there.
I do like one of the things I like to do is again, I'll fish like a jig of Meigs or something down below, and then a few inches up. Sometimes even have it close. I'll like 6 inches up only. And like a fly, like let's say a little Prince nymph or copper john or something. So it can sink it too, but it's not bringing your bait down. And sometimes on those really light bite days, like we had a couple last year where they weren't touching anything bigger than like a speck. Like that's all they wanted. And so you'd be pounding the bottom and you stirring up the silt, and perch would come in and they just wouldn't hit that 1/4 ounce jig, whatever it is. And then I just dropped my rod tip a bit, and you'd see on the camera that little speck just drop down right in front of their face. They couldn't resist it. They'd eat it pretty much every single time. So even that, we were finding dropping down that finesse presentation when we have their attention, just drop it down a bit, and you'd hook up with it too.
Yeah, but we can dig even a bit deeper in that, and it's going to really help people catch fish when there's a light bite. Perch only. This is specific to perch. So most fish, when they come in and they're I'm your little lure, right? And here comes a bass. Bass come in 100 mile an hour, open their mouth and go over it and keep moving their body forward, and also suck in water at the same time as their lure. A perch will come up to that lure, they stop dead, and they go, and you get one shot. So it's called a flare. So they stop dead of the bait every time, and they flare and they suck the bait into their mouth, which makes them different than a bass and a pike because they don't act that way, right? So you want to get that bait in their mouth. Well, if they have a light bite, that's usually because they're well fed. There could be a hatch in the lake at that time, or there could be an excess of shiners in the area. That light bite is because they have full bellies. When they have full bellies, that suction is even lighter. So again, like you said, you want to go with something small like a fly, or if you're using a minnow, what you really want to do is pinch everything off. Just have the head or even a piece of the minnow, but you want the hook shank, the hook point, to be the tail of your lure at that point. So when they do that, the first thing going in their mouth is that hook. And that's the number one reason we see clients not catch fish, is too much meat on their hooks. Absolutely.
So let's move on to talking about perch fishing, and we hate it when a pike moves in. But now let's say we got excited because we also brought our pike rod.
Yeah.
So that's what Jesse and I like to do, because when we're lazy and don't want to move, we'll just start switching up the species we're going for. And what are some pike techniques then? So first of all, like any bait or lures if they are in the area, but also like what kind of areas are you looking for if you were targeting pike to begin with?
Yeah, so pike on Cook's Bay, again, this is specific to where we operate. I can't speak to other areas, and I'm not even going to try. Pike really are masters of their environment, no matter where they are. So you got to look at where they are. So on Cook's Bay, we have a shallow shelf. It goes out, you carry out of the water pretty far. You get to about 10, 12 feet. Then it starts to drop, and then you go down to like 30 feet or so. We find pike hang out in the top side of that drop all winter long, shallow. What happens with the pike is they sit higher in the water column. It took us a little while to figure out why they were doing that. So when we were first targeting pike and learning pike in that area and on hard water, we were actually fishing too deep. We were fishing below the fish. We didn't realize the pike are typically less than 1 foot below the surface of the ice.
Wow.
And we believe the reason that they're usually there is we think that maybe perch that didn't release well float up to the top, and we think the pike are eating effectively winter kill perch from under the side of the ice. We kind of caught on to that about 10 years ago now when we were fishing, and we noticed that every pike that came by us, even if we were out in 30 feet, was literally right under the ice. So much so that when you're fishing deep and you're sight fishing, they would scare you when they appeared, because they're like, what the heck is that right there, right? And we're all experienced anglers, and it still kind of gave us a little jump. So the pike are high. That's the one thing. People are throwing... So our number one method of catching pike in the winter is a frozen mackerel, which looks like a herring, on a quick strike rig. So you got your 2 trebles, you've got your steel leader, and we're using them on under tip-ups mostly. Now, the thing that most people do is they set that down on the bottom, or near the bottom. You don't want that for pike. We literally put it 2 feet below the ice. So at least the pike can see it forward if they're in front of it, or if they happen to be under it, they can see it up, because it really contrasts against the bottom of that ice, right? Like when they look up, anything under that ice really, really, really stands out, especially if it looks like a fish. So yeah, our big thing is quick strike rigs, frozen mackerel. If we're fishing out of a hut and we're fishing perch and we don't want to target pike, we keep that lipless. That little one you had, Jesse, was amazing. That's very similar. We'll keep that on a rod close by, and we'll throw that down there to try to entice a pike to bite. But that's our number one pike approach, is definitely that frozen mackerel. You do have to squeeze the mackerel to get the air bladder to pop, to get it to sink. But once you've done that, you just sit it down there and keep it maybe 20 feet away from your hut, because you also don't want to scare the perch away either. Keep it far enough away from your hut, but keep it legal so you can see it. And that's our go-to for pike for sure.
That explains a lot of how Jesse and I weren't catching pike on our tip-up, because we were fishing like a foot off the bottom.
Yeah.
And we have yet to have any success. So we're not going to waste our time this year.
We would catch pike all the time perch fishing. Yeah. So I was like, we're going to set up some tip-ups and catch them on tip-ups. Nothing. You catch them on your perch baits and not on the pike setup.
Most people hook pike in our huts as they're reeling in their line, and their tiny little perch lure is passing that last 2 feet of the water column before it comes out. That's where most people get hit. And the secret, most important thing we tell all of our clients, make sure your drag is set for pike, not for perch. A lot of our clients will have everything cranked down for perch because you might not need that drag. As soon as a pike hits, they break off. Or sometimes if a whitefish comes and picks something up off bottom, they break off. And it's heartbreaking, because you know what? If they had that drag a little looser, they might have got those fish, right?
It's another good point too. This is a little bit of a story time. Jess and I were fishing years ago, and we were fishing in a hut. And this was one day, like it was our best jumbo day we ever had. And it was just one of those, like the bite was hot. We were catching a bunch, and you'd see these things, and top down, like they look like tigers, right? You see like the big barring stripes across their back. And we were catching some, and we caught a few like 13-inch perch. And then we looked down and we saw, I think we caught one that was 14 and a half inches or 15 inches. And there was one that was like twice the size of it. It was just like a football, and it had the barring 100%. It was a perch, nothing else, but it looked like it must've been over 2 pounds. Like it's nuts. I had never seen a perch like this. And it bit Jesse's, I think we're using the jaw. What were you using? Was it one of those?
I was using a little tungsten.
Yeah. And it came up and it just nailed you. Like, sets the hook, and his drag was just cranked down because we're just going for perch, and he snapped the hook on the little hook set. And it's not like he cranked on it, but this thing didn't move, and it just snapped the line. So even you might get a record perch. Make sure your drag is set for a record perch.
Yeah. And if your drag is set properly, a few seasons ago I was on Cook's Bay, and I was just jigging a little Castmaster with a little chain, with the little treble hook with a little bead on it, right?
Yeah.
One of my favorites. And I had a pike swoop in, so I'm on the camera. He went right in front of my spoon and then just ate it on camera. And I set the hook on an ultralight and 3-pound test. I got him in. It took like 15 minutes, but I got this 36-inch pike in through barely fit through the perch hole. Like you can get giant fish on if you have your gear set up properly. So yeah, definitely that perch that I lost, the big one, still haunts me to this day. So my drags, I always check the drags now.
that honestly is like
my record perch.
That's one of the most painful ice fishing things ever. Like, I wish we could have seen. I'm so curious to know what it would have weighed, what it would have measured, because that thing was the largest perch I've ever seen in my life. Like,
But there's perch now on Cook's Bay. The biggest I know of now is just over 16 inches.
wow.
You know, so there's some big fat female perch on Cook's Bay now. It's incredible. I'm embarrassed to say, I'll say it publicly. My biggest is still only 14.
Hey, that's awesome.
Well, it's not that great now, but I've gone out and caught multiple 14s in a day. Do you think I can get that extra eighth of an inch to up my PB? Never. Hasn't happened yet. And it's almost embarrassing because I'm kind of known as the perch guy, and it's still 14s is my biggest. I've caught more than I can count, but 14 bang on. That's it for me.
That's like a bass angler being like, you know what, guys? All I catch is 5-pounders. I mean, like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I haven't cracked 5 pounds in my largemouth yet, so that's enough complaining there, Donny.
I thought, sorry, before we get into the next segment, I thought we could talk about the giveaway.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So with season 3, new podcast, the way that we're doing it now, we have awesome guests every single month, sometimes twice a month. But on top of that, we also have some super cool giveaways. So Donny from Hotbox Huts, who's the guy that's talking to us now, if you're not paying attention, he has an awesome giveaway. And tell us all about it.
It's a high five. You see him? He gives you a high five. One lucky Patreon member is going to be winning that high five now.
There we go. One high five. All right. Yeah, it's a good one, guys. So we're going to do a hut rental for 4 people. So you can come out with your family, your buddies, whatever it is. That's valued at $320 right there. So it gets you a day on the ice. It gets you heated ride in and out. You're heating your hut. You've got your minnows. You've got your hut. You've got us helping you along the way to help you catch these jumbo perch and pike we're talking about. And then we also have a selection of custom lures that you can only get from us. So we have the custom slab grabber in Hotbox Huts colors. We have a Meigs. We have a Mags Bad Boys. We've got the Sci-Fly in there as well. We have the Junior Goby. We have a soft plastic from True North Baits. So they made us a Junior Goby in our colors with a glow head. It works really well for as a dropper weight on perch as well. And this year we're adding one new one to the list. Big Jim McLaughlin's tied us up some bucktail type jigs. They could also work good as a dropper, and they're in perch size. They're a little smaller. So we'll throw in one of each lure as well as that hut around to whoever wins that contest.
That's
amazing. And here's the thing. If you only have one buddy or 2 buddies, or like one buddy, and you have those 2 extra seats in the hut, you can always invite me and Andrew out too. We might even come. Unless you're weirdos, then we won't. But no, that's probably that is definitely the biggest giveaway we've ever done. So we really appreciate that. And whoever wins this, I'm personally going to be jealous. I'm super jealous. You know, you think us super famous, wealthy podcast guys, just kidding. We don't make any money, but you think that we would be not jealous? We are 100%. So that's awesome. That's quite a haul.
Yeah, that's an amazing.
Well, and this year too, we're throwing in some new on ice stuff out there. So we're going to be selling our own branded pepperettes this year too. So that'll help keep you fueled when you're out there. And we purchased a portable sauna on a mobile trailer. So
this is awesome.
Set up for it's 10 feet long. It's ginormous, and it's got a dome on one end, like a viewing dome. And it's mobile. So we're going to bring that out this year. That'll be something that'll be available for people to use during the day. If they get bored fishing, they can jump in the sauna.
That's literally a hot box hut.
That's amazing.
You got it. Well, and then the opposite of that, we're actually going to have a hole in the ice too beside it, and we're going to have a cage set up. So if anyone wants to do the cold water plunge testing, hey, if you got a floater suit and you want to know what it feels like to go in and get cold, this would be a perfect chance for you to do it. Right?
I'm going in my swim trunks. I'm going in the sauna, then quick dunk in the cold, and back in the hut. Start fishing.
Perfect. We're gonna hold you to that. We're gonna hold you
absolutely,
to that.
Absolutely. I will 100% do that.
I can't believe that you want to see Andrew in his banana hammock. Absolutely disgusting. Anyway, that's an awesome giveaway. So if you're wondering how you can win this giveaway, the only people that are entered into this giveaway are our super awesome Patreon members who support this show every single month. They help us cover the cost of running this show. It does take some cost for all the programming and podcast hosts and all that that gibberish stuff that we have to pay for. So we appreciate the people that support the show, and we are going to support you guys with winning some awesome giveaways. So you'll check out the link down below. If you aren't a Patreon member, you can check that out. And again, we'd like to thank Donny from Hotbox Huts, him and his wife, for donating such an awesome giveaway. That's absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely insane.
Good luck, guys.
And just a quick note on the Patreon stuff there. For $2 a month, you're automatically entered. So it's not like you have to sign up and then you got to sign up to all these giveaways. You're automatically entered. So as soon as you're a Patreon member, you're in there. And even still, if you don't want to do a year-long commitment, let's say you want to win this one giveaway, hop on to Patreon as soon as we draw it, and hopefully you win. You can cancel Patreon if you want. We'd like it if you didn't, but you don't have to. So I just want to point that out. You are automatically entered as soon as you become a Patreon member.
And I'm going to encourage people to join on as a Patreon member too. I've listened to all your podcasts now. They're great when I'm driving. I've even been a winner. I've even won, and I've
Donny
done
is a
more.
Patreon.
I've done nothing more than just Patreon, which is only a couple bucks a month, and help support you guys and what you're doing, which I think is a great thing for us average Ontario anglers.
Just as a disclaimer, Donny cannot win his own prize.
That's right. If his name pops up, we go instead.
Yes. Yeah.
Fair enough.
So I have a whole bunch of these questions from listeners. Do you mind if we go into some of these? This podcast is going a bit long. I love this. Don't even be mad. I'm happy about this. But we're going to try to keep these questions 30 seconds or less because there's so many of them. And I thought we could try to cover as many as possible. So 30 seconds or less. Some guy named, I'm just going to say Chuck. He says, what's your biggest fish you caught through the ice?
It'd be a lake trout for sure. Through the ice, probably not that big. 12, 13 pounds maybe.
Next time your buddy falls in, just snag him and claim that as your biggest catch.
There we go. Yeah.
All right, here's another question. If you could only fish for one fish forever, what would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. Guys, it would probably be carp.
Really?
It would probably be carp. I
super underrated.
Yeah, I bow fish them. Nothing pulls like a carp on the end of your line as far as freshwater fish go here in Ontario. It would be carp for sure. And the size, I've brought carp in that are over 40 pounds. So yeah.
Nice.
Actually, I was going to add, when we talked before about setting up this podcast, you were talking about bow fishing for carp, which is something that me and Andrew have always thought would be interesting to do. Mm-hmm. We're definitely going to have to get you on another podcast, maybe just for an interesting fishing fact. We'll just have you on as a guest for that segment, and you can tell us all about that, because that is something that it's interesting. If you agree with it or not, I think it's pretty interesting. So we'll talk about that another day. So maybe in the spring we'll talk.
For sure.
All right, here's a question from Gadzuka. He says, have you ever lost a hut due to thin ice?
Yes and no. We have had huts enter the water. We have retrieved them. Most of that was due to negligence on our own part in the very beginning. So if you have a permanent hut out there, you need to be able to check on it every couple of days at minimum, right? And with us having as many as we had in the beginning and some rough ice conditions, we've had situations where it was pressure crack related. The crack formed right beside the hut, and that ice shelf tipped into it. We try to avoid those situations as much as possible. The worst, though, we did have a hut disappear all the way to the Keswick side of the lake one time during a major wind event. We had 110 kilometer an hour gusting winds, and we had one of our smaller, lighter huts all the way to Keswick, so it was over 3 kilometers it traveled.
Wow.
Just blowing across the top of the ice?
Yes.
Wow.
Some people actually submitted videos to me, shared videos to me of it traveling after the fact from their windows of their houses.
The little hut that could.
There you go.
There's
not much left of it, though.
The amount of times people have seen me just trying to like sprint after a bucket that's flying across the ice. It's tether things down. Have carabiners and little bungee cords are awesome. Have everything strapped down and whatever. That's a good tip.
All right, here's a good question from I Catch Dinks. He says, what goes into scoping out productive grounds?
Depends on the species again, right? So if you're looking for perch, you're looking for sandy flats, which provide the food. They eat a lot of bugs. If you're looking for pike, you're going to need the structure that they're going to relate to. Whitefish, again, are another schooling fish. They're going to be kind of all over the lake, cruising you can catch them as shallow as 5 feet of water. They could be as deep as 120. It depends on what you're looking for again, but you really need to choose what species you're targeting on that day. There is no one spot for do it all on Lake Simcoe.
And how do you find, let's say it's perch, let's simplify it. How do you find those sandy areas? Like, what goes into your process for that?
So a lot of that scouting's done for us as an operator in the soft water season by boat. So when we're out there, we pay, because the weeds grow in different spots and the vegetation grows a little bit differently every year. Ideally, we want a big pocket, like a large sandy flat in the middle of the weeds. That's kind of ideal, and those aren't in the same place every year. So you've got to actually go out. Forward-facing sonar and the live scope really helps find those areas as well too. It almost feels like cheating now. It's really cut down on how many hours we have to spend out there looking. But yeah, that's it's never the same spot. You gotta go out and physically look and check.
And that's another. We talk about, again, we don't have live scope, but we talk about the applications for it. A lot of people are against it. A lot of people are for it. And I always say, if you're a guide or an operator, especially using live scope, it's just a time saver. It's your job. It's a tool that helps you find spots better. I'm not against that at all. So that is definitely a cool application that I never thought of before, is guides finding spots for ice fishing later in the year. That's cool. Here's a question from Taylor. He says, what's the best live bait setup to not lose your rods under the ice? ... Not that I have ...
So live bait, we prefer, like you said, use the Meigs or some sort of a drop shot rig with a Meigs on the bottom, or a bucktail, or whatever you're going to use as your bottom weight. High hook with a minnow head. If I had a choice, I'd use a minnow head over a whole minnow by default. And number 2 for the rod holder. This is something that actually I'd like to speak to a little bit, because it's going to help a lot of guys out. Canadian Tire and HT sell those little wire rod holders. They're round and they fold up. Those are the absolute best tip-up style rod holder in existence, including for whitefish. So everybody buys all these fancy rod holders for whitefish. What those little holders do is, for one, they lay flat, so they fit in your bag really nice. They're like $5 to buy. They're pretty much free. And they allow you to adjust your rod back and forth on top of them to get that perfect spot, so that it's just pulling up on your weight, your lure, enough that it's not lifting it off bottom. As soon as a fish touches it, it's either going to lift it up, like in a whitefish situation with a pickup bite, or sometimes perch will do that off the bottom too. Or if a fish even pulls on it, it's going to let you know, right? Those rod holders are absolutely golden. There's ones that hold your entire rod, and they have like a wooden base, which have been kind of popular lately. But now you're dealing with physics and kinetic energy, and now you've got to get that whole thing moving before you're alerted. Where that little lightweight one, you can move it so it's just lifting off the bottom. That would be the ultimate setup. You still might lose a rod through the ice, though, if you're not paying attention and grab it in time.
We will link that below in the show notes. So I'll make Donnie send me a link to that, and I'll put it in the show notes below, because that sounds like something that me and Andrew need a few of. We've almost lost a few rods ourselves, but that's another story. Here's another question from, I can't even pronounce this, some guy. He says, what's the best way to be as productive as possible in a hut?
Efficiency is everything, right? And that's why guys win tournaments. Yes, there's some fishing skill there, obviously, but it's the most efficient guys usually win the tournaments. Same thing in a hut. So you're going to want to have multiple rods for perch. So you're going to want to always have a backup or 2, because if that school is underneath you and something gets tangled or something breaks off or something doesn't work, you don't want to be fixing it. You want to toss that rod and have another rod ready to rock and roll. That would be the number 1 for efficiency. Number 2 is you. Take care of you. You need food in your belly. There you go. Yeah, you need to be as fit as Jesse here.
You need to
I don't
eat
mean
some
to brag,
pepperoni
but
sticks.
Yeah. You need warm hands. You need warm mind. You need a full belly. If you're struggling anywhere, if you have cold feet, you're going to catch less fish. It's a distraction. So take care of you first, and then worry about your efficiency second, right?
That's why I bought new boots this year. It's our year, Jesse.
It's our year for warmth. Well, Andrew's.
Awesome.
I felt bad because I had like the full float suit and super warm boots, and Andrew's just sitting there in this like Walmart boots and some crappy like coat. And I was like, I'm warm. And he's like, I think we should go in. I was like, nope, I don't think so. But now we have the same suit and the same boots pretty much. So
Yeah, I was
now,
practically hugging the
you know.
buddy heater in the hut, just trying to keep.
You tried hugging me, but I was like, no.
So adding to that, everybody's different, right? Some of us have sweatier feet, maybe a sweatier back. Moisture
That's
management
Andrew.
is key. There you go, and I do. That's me as well. Where what my needs are going to differ from everybody else's needs, right? So what I tell everyone, and this is a tip that I wish more people would do. The guys that work with me all do it. At the end of the day, I ask my guys, "What's the coldest part of your body?" And they'll tell me what it is. Could be their neck from the wind or whatever. It's like, hey, next time when you come out tomorrow, I don't want you complaining about that body part anymore. So fix it. Within a very short period of time, you'll have your whole body covered head to toe, and you know how to deal with every spot, right? If something doesn't work that day you go out, fix it for the next time. Don't push through it. Just fix it. You know, you're going to need the gear anyways, and your comfort matters, right?
That's a really good point.
All right. I thought we could talk about the last question. A lot of these, if you submitted a question and I didn't read it, it's because we covered it throughout the podcast, and I don't want to just repeat stuff. A lot of people are like, what's your favorite perch lure? What's your favorite this? We're not going to talk about that. But here is a good question, and it's a good question to end the questions because I know exactly what you're going to say. But Ty, he asked this question: best fish to get a newcomer addicted to ice fishing. And then in brackets, he says his girlfriend hates the cold.
Mm-hmm. Perch with a HUD operator, 100%.
Hot box huts.
Perch with a HUD operator who has a sauna.
With the sauna. There you go. Yeah.
Let's keep this PG-13, but that sauna, it can get hot in there.
That's right. What happens on the ice stays on the ice.
So yeah, perch fishing, again, me and Andrew have been doing that for a bit. Andrew grew up near Lake Simcoe, so we've been doing it over the years, and we absolutely love it. It's one of the funnest ways to go fishing, especially when you're in a hut. And I know maybe it's one of those things where you might only get out in a hut once a year. Maybe it's just due to time or due to expense, whatever. But being in a hut is just a completely different experience. A lot of people think ice fishing negative. Oh, you're sitting out on a bucket on the ice. You're freezing your butt off. When you're in a hut, everything's amazing. It's warm. You can look down the hole and see the fish. It's so entertaining. It's great for kids. It's great for everyone, beginners, experts. It's great. We love it. And we're glad. I learned, like I know Andrew did. I saw him nodding the whole time, but I learned a few tips that I'm going to use this year. So we really appreciate that. That pike tip with the dead bait.
Yeah.
I'm doing that. And if it doesn't work, I know who to blame.
Blame me.
So what are some of your socials? You got Instagram?
Yeah, it's everything's Hotbox Huts. So we run Hotbox Huts on Instagram, Hotbox Huts on Facebook. Our YouTube channels where we do our regular ice reports. We're going to be hitting that a lot heavier this year too. We also have special guests that come on our ice reports, whether it's environmental organization. We've had members of parliament. We've had our deputy mayor come out from Innisfil and speak to some things going on in Innisfil. I'm sure you guys will join me this year, hopefully, and come out and do one with us. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're doing a lot of family related stuff because we have a brand new to us daughter this year. She's three months old and she's amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. So we're doing even right now. It'll still be active when you put this up. We have a coloring contest on our Facebook page, so you can submit a colored picture and get a free hut rental as a prize, right? As a draw prize for that.
Just submitted 17 of them, by the way.
Yeah,
that's okay.
I didn't stay in the lines, but it's okay.
Right. Well, it's supposed to be 12 and under, but we can maybe let it slide a bit.
No.
His is the one that's all green.
Whatever works. I'm not going to judge. Art is in the eye of the beholder, right? Whatever you like is good art. And then the other thing, in addition to that, my wife, she runs Unbroken Outdoors, so she's got a very popular TikTok channel. She puts a lot of her Hotbox Huts ice reports and that on that TikTok channel on Unbroken Outdoors, and she's got the same socials along with that, your Instagram and your Facebook too.
So we'll link everything down in the show notes. Again, sweet. I've been following you guys on YouTube for years, just for the ice reports, because that is very, very valuable information. So at the very least, if you're going to fish Lake Simcoe, especially Cooks Bay, make sure you're following them on YouTube as well. But you should be following them anyway because they're giving away a sick ice hut rental that you could win.
There we go.
And remember, those 2 extra seats, me and Andrew are available. 100%.
One last thing I wanted to mention, again, like you have some awesome stuff that you're providing, not only for the giveaway, but just in general as a hut runner. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you offer, or you wanted to pitch in about what you do? We know you get people on fish. You get people in your hut. You have heat. You got a cool sauna, cold plunge. You got some pepperoni sticks there. You got some baits they can only get from you. Is there anything else I'm missing?
The only thing we already hit on it. We do bow fishing in the off season, right? So in the spring we do bow fishing for carp on Cook's Bay. I don't do open water guiding anymore. We used to. We just kind of moved away from that. We can only handle so much, but we like to be experts at what we do, and you can't be an expert if you do everything. So we're going to focus.
That's why I do nothing.
That's why we suck at everything.
We're going to stick to what we know best, right? And that's what we're going to continue doing.
Excellent. So before we end the episode, we want to give another big shout out to our Patreon members. Thank you so much for helping support this podcast. When we wish you, all the best chances to be able to win this awesome giveaway that Hotbox has set up for us. Well, for you, not for us, for you. If we also want to thank all of our listeners. If you have a chance, please rate, review us, send us in a review on Spotify or Apple, whatever. And if it's entertaining, if it's 5 stars especially, we'll read it sometimes in the podcast. So make it entertaining, have fun with it, but let us know what you think of the podcast. Again, we have a lot of awesome stuff this year coming to you. This is just a sampling, and I think we did pretty good. What do you think, Jesse?
I thought it was amazing. And honestly, we've talked about this a few times. This year for our podcast is going to be all about learning new things, and we're going to learn from people that are very
Smarter
good at what
than
they
us.
do. Yes. So we do appreciate Donny for coming on, because he has way more experience probably in 1 year fishing on Simcoe than I do my whole life. So I am very happy to learn from someone like that. So we do appreciate you spending the time, especially during the holiday season, blocking off 2 hours of your time to come on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me on too, guys. Like I'm a fan, so it's pretty cool to be on here, with you guys too.
Happy to have you. Now, we were saying how there's changes to the podcast. One thing that hasn't changed is, as tradition states, the quote of the week. And to handle that, Donny.
All right, guys. So I often get asked how the bite is, and my answer is always, the fishing is good for good fishermen. So keep learning, guys.
So that's why it sucks for me.